The man you see here, allegedly, is a parent's worst nightmare. A man who allegedly kidnapped a young girl after she got off a school bus.
From the information received, we believe that Brinley was a victim of a stranger abduction.
And the alleged predator, he is now in custody, and we have new court documents revealing why he allegedly targeted this girl and her family, a family who he had allegedly never met before. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. The case that we're talking about today out of Minnesota, it's not easy to stomach. It's not easy to talk about. The young girl in this case, the victim, just 7 years old, she is now in the safe hands of family, recovering after she was allegedly abducted by someone who, frankly, if guilty of what he's accused of, is nothing short of a predator. And this suspect, according to law enforcement, he had been lurking on social media, not just allegedly watching the family of this girl, who, by the way, he had never met before. Potentially, he was watching others online. And the Facebook groups that this man was reportedly a part of, it is truly disturbing when you hear what Joseph Bragg, 28 years old, is accused of doing in Minnesota. Now, this is his mugshot after his arrest, and we have a lot to unpack when it comes to what he allegedly did on January 21st in Sherburne County, Minnesota, in the community of Zimmerman. Now, this community, it's about an hour away of Minneapolis. And when we talk about January 21st, it was Wednesday, typical day of the week, a day that kids go to school and then they come home on the bus. They're dropped off as they typically are in a school day. And this story begins around 3:30 in the afternoon, because that is when the girl who is at the center of this story, just 7 years old, was dropped off. It's at her usual spot. Her parents said that she didn't return home, though. And that's where the concern began. And the only people who had custody of this girl, the only people who came to pick her up typically, mom, dad, grandma, that is it. Now, I'm not going to show you the girl's face or say her name. There was an Amber Alert that was issued when she went missing, and law enforcement made sure that her face, her name, her description, that it was out there. But now that she is safe, we are going to protect her identity because she is recovering. Now, police say about 3 hours after that girl went missing, they received their first call from family. Family said that they had been looking for her, and there was some sort of miscommunication between mom, dad, and grandma about who was going to pick the 7-year-old girl up that day from the bus stop. According to police video footage, they saw the girl walking just about 20 minutes after she was dropped off in the direction of her home. But then before 4 o'clock, they see that girl turn around and start heading back in the direction of the bus stop, and then she vanishes.
After checking with family and neighbors, 911 was contacted. Deputies, investigators, and fire responded to the area. The scene was chaotic. There were numerous tips and speculation being called into law enforcement. One involved a black passenger car that was following Brinley's school bus. Investigators were able to determine that no one actually saw Brinley enter the black car.
This is the news conference that law enforcement gave per Fox 9 in Minnesota. And this is a picture of the black car that was spreading on social media. In fact, we got this picture because it was posted by one of the girl's relatives. Now, eventually police say that the person that they were looking for was actually driving another vehicle. But I'm showing you this picture to kind of tell you the chaos and how difficult it can be in those moments that law enforcement are trying to find someone like a 7-year-old girl. And there are so many different pieces of information swirling online. We partner with TruthFinder for the public record searches that we do here on Law&Crime. TruthFinder saves us research time so we can focus on reporting crime, not paperwork. You can use TruthFinder as well. You type in a name to find addresses, criminal history, and more. It is our go-to tool for checks and one of the largest search services in the United States. And with a subscription, you get unlimited confidential searches to check on new neighbors, vet people you meet online, or find someone to reconnect with. Even look up registered sex offenders nearby, or you can do a background search on yourself. Stay informed, stay safe, check public records with TruthFinder now at truthfinder.com/OTC. Now, at this point, police have not said what the exact moment was where they realized that this was not a case of a girl who maybe ran away or got lost, or there was some sort of misunderstanding with family members as to why she was missing. Police haven't said specifically what the moment was where they realized that this was an abduction, and they allegedly realized that the suspect they arrested was the person responsible. But there are dots to connect between this family and this suspect, and it has to do with something that happened online. Now, once they realized that this was an alleged kidnapping, the Amber Alert went out. And that is when the pictures of this girl went on social media. When law enforcement put out that alert that we always get on our phones when there's an Amber Alert. Now, this is one of the pictures that went out on social media of this young girl. This is from a fire department in Elk River, Minnesota. Now, this suspect, police say, allegedly took this girl. His name is Joseph Bragg.
Through our continued investigation, potential suspect Joseph Bragg was developed. From the information received, we believe that was a victim of a stranger abduction. Through investigative techniques, we developed a general location of the suspect and potential vehicles involved. One of the vehicles was identified as a white Dodge Ram pickup. A COPS alert was issued coordinating with law enforcement agencies in Albert Lea.
You hear law enforcement talk about Albert Lea, Minnesota. That's a community about 2 hours south of where this girl lived in Zimmerman. Albert Lea is near the Iowa border. And according to court records, law enforcement found that Bragg allegedly rented a white Dodge Ram truck with Tennessee plates. And then he had his cell phone on him, according to police. And as we know from a lot of these stories, that provides very critical information and location data that detectives can use to track someone. And that is what they did in this case. And they saw that Bragg was allegedly headed in the direction of Iowa. And again, that Amber Alert was out at this point. Now, in a story like this, where there are just so many disturbing details, it is important to point out the good parts. And that is certainly the case when you think of this young girl who is now back with her family, though she has a lot of recovery ahead of her. But then also you take a look at how the community responded in Minnesota, with dozens of people coming out volunteering to find this girl in the middle of the night. This is a picture that was posted by a state senator for the town of Zimmerman, Minnesota. And volunteers there, they came out to help with the search. This is a picture of all of them gathering at the girls' school before they canvassed the area. Now, as that was going on, this grassroots search, police were zeroing in on Joseph Bragg in hopes they could find this girl. Police say at 12:34 in the morning. And remember, this girl went missing around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So she had allegedly been with this man for several hours. But at 12:34, police spotted that Dodge Ram truck at a gas station in Albert Lea, Minnesota. Police then pull that truck over. Bragg is driving it. And they say inside the truck, it was just filled with items, to the point that it made it really difficult when you looked inside to see whether anyone else was there. But police say after further observation, an officer was able to observe a juvenile female in the back seat of the vehicle with blonde hair consistent with the description of victim A. And according to arrest documents, when asked who else was in the vehicle, Bragg allegedly said the name Nova. And that's not the girl's name. Now, that girl, though, was in a child's booster seat inside the vehicle. Joseph Bragg was taken into custody. That girl was safely in the custody of law enforcement. Now, we still have a long way to go in breaking down what allegedly happened in the hours after Bragg allegedly, and I'm saying allegedly because he is innocent until proven guilty, that Bragg allegedly had this girl. We have a lot to talk about there because it will be very critical when it comes to what prosecuting him will look like. And it's also going to be incredibly critical to break down what he allegedly was up to online. But let's first talk about how Bragg allegedly targeted this victim and her family.
Can you talk about how the suspect in this case targeted her, or do you know the family? Can you elaborate on that at all?
The only thing that I can tell you that there was a social media tie. And that's still kind of an active part of the investigation, so we don't really want to go into further detail on that.
So in the news conference, police wouldn't reveal what the social media tie was. But in these court documents we have, there is more insight here. So it reads that the girl's mom told police that she did have an odd online interaction in early December with a profile online with someone named Joseph Bragg. And she said that Bragg added her on Facebook a little more than a month ago. And she thought that he was someone who she knew just by looking at his profile picture. So she added him back. But then she realized that he actually was a stranger. They had never met before. She said that Bragg allegedly started asking her questions about herself and her family. And he asked if she had any children. And then he reportedly went on to say that he wanted children and, quote, was not discouraged to learn a woman already had children. And he also allegedly, quote, indicated desire to engage in activities with children. Now, this is a Facebook profile that we found for Joseph Bragg, and you can see that he is in pictures with a young girl, and it's unclear who that girl is. Bragg also told the girl's mom in the Facebook chat that he worked in childcare, and this is incredibly disturbing. Law enforcement was asked about that.
We're seeing mothers say that he was reaching out to them on Facebook groups, posing as a nanny. Do you know if there were other kids that he had attempted to take, or was he working as a nanny? Is there any information you can provide?
What I can tell you, as I said in the beginning, pretty still involved in this investigation. That's a piece of it that I don't think we can talk about at this point right now.
So law enforcement was asked about Bragg marketing himself as a babysitter online. And this appears to be where that question came from. So not only did we find what appears to be Bragg's Facebook profile, but we also found a Facebook group for moms looking for babysitters in Minnesota. And there's a group admin who posted a picture of Bragg's Facebook account saying that he had been banned from the group after the information came about, showing that he was the one responsible for this alleged abduction. And it appears this man who allegedly abducted a girl was marketing himself online as someone who could take care of kids. There's another group admin who wrote, quote, it's come to our attention that the abductor, Joseph Bragg, of the little girl was a part of this group at one point. Please make sure that if he has reached out to you, you take proper safety precautions of blocking the account. And we have seen moms post messages that they say show that Bragg had reached out to them saying something along the lines of, if you're okay for a male to look after your kids, I can be a babysitter. And if all of that is true, disturbing doesn't even explain a fraction of it. Now, police say when Bragg was arrested, he refused to provide a statement to law enforcement. Court records detail what else investigators claim they discovered about Bragg, and we are going to be very delicate with this next part of the story because police say that Bragg allegedly brought the girl to a home after allegedly taking her from the bus stop about 45 minutes away from where that alleged abduction occurred. Police say that they found Bragg's car at that location, which they call a home. And they also say that Bragg allegedly told a neighbor if he could store his vehicle there because he was planning to go out of state. Bragg then allegedly used a rideshare to take that girl to a hotel about 10 minutes away. And police say a room was reserved for roughly a month from December 27th to January 21st. Detectives have video that shows Bragg allegedly carrying a large suitcase into the hotel. And police say when they searched the room, they found several items, including unused diapers. Police also say that location data shows that Bragg was allegedly in the area of the girl's house on the day that he allegedly took the girl around the time that she would have gotten off the bus. And the data allegedly shows that he was in the same area the day prior. Court records show that police did a forensic interview with the girl, and they do believe that Bragg allegedly sexually assaulted the girl at the hotel. Bragg is facing a charge of first-degree criminal sexual conduct as well as a charge of kidnapping. This case is incredibly, incredibly difficult to comprehend, and it does appear that Bragg has never really been in real trouble with the law. He was convicted in 2023 of a misdemeanor for driving distracted, for looking at his cell phone behind the wheel, according to court records, but there's really no other crime that has come up when we searched his name in online records. Bragg is currently being held on a $4 million bond, and he is currently in a county jail. Court records show that a judge said he is not eligible for a public defender, so he will have to hire his own lawyer. Court records also show that if he is convicted, he could face up to 70 years in prison. Join us now to talk more about this case is retired detective commander with the Chicago Police Department, Will Svilar. Always great to have you on Law and Crime. This case is, as a parent, it's just chilling because it just feels like the PSA that's put out like in an after school program that's like the exaggerated version of reality. But this one is that. It is the worst nightmare in real life, according to what's being alleged here. When it comes to Amber Alert cases, I mean, how common is it that you have that predator who has no previous, they had some sort of contact on Facebook, but in general, it's not like an uncle. It's not like a cousin. It's not someone who's come in contact with the family before, that it's truly a random stranger that would do something like this.
I mean, it happens. You don't see it every day. Usually, like you say, in these cases, there's a lot of family members that are involved in this, uncles or whatever. But in this case, where you just have a true predator who's flown under the radar, who hasn't been picked up by law enforcement before, it's rare, and it's so scary and so dangerous. And we just thank God that the mom thought about this contact through Facebook and gave the information to the authorities. It's a nightmare.
Because we read the court documents, and it kind of lays out the path that law enforcement went down to eventually find this man and bring him under arrest. But when you step back and you think about, okay, the report comes in that this girl didn't come back from the bus stop, and then they go through and it's the video cameras to try and piece together where she might have been. At what point in these cases do you get to that place where you're like, this is a problem? This isn't just a girl who went missing or ran away. This is an abduction that we're dealing with, and we got to put out an Amber Alert.
Well, when you say there's ages that are involved, that's a tender age missing. Okay, anything under 10 years old, everybody is involved. And again, you take all these missing persons cases seriously, especially when you're dealing with kids. But when you get a tender age kid, a 7-year-old, or anybody under 10, these tender age missing cases are high priority, and you immediately give it every bit of attention that you can.
And when it comes to what seemed to be, and police haven't laid out specifically what the moment was like where they knew it was this guy, but there's this story that the mom told them that he had reached out to her, and to her, it was like, I don't know this guy. Maybe I did. It turned out I didn't. They have some very odd interaction where he gets to talking about having kids and things like that. And then, then you see police go down the path of like, okay, he rented this vehicle. This vehicle was close by, the cell phone data and all of that. But how do you get to the point where you're even getting on the case of this person? Because it seems like that would be a very small, like, I can't think about the social media interactions I had a month ago. And it seems like it could have just been this small little moment that then the detectives go down and then realize that is the path that they have to follow.
When as people, we're looking at our social media stuff, we're involved with our lives every day, and all of a sudden somebody pops up saying, hey, let's be friends. Maybe, and you hit yes, because you don't know. Maybe you knew this person from years ago. It's just so fortunate that this mom thought about this and alerted the authorities to this animal, this predator. It's just so fortunate, because how many times do we go through the course of our day and we're not even really thinking about it? So social media is very dangerous, especially to kids. And now you see a predator coming in through the mom to get to the kids. It's terrible.
It is. And you think about the location data and how critical that was in finding him, because he was headed for the Iowa border, and he was already a couple hours away from where he allegedly took this girl. I mean, what's the moment like? Because I also think in like Albert Lee, Minnesota, and there's this Amber Alert that's out, and then suddenly you're at a truck stop in a rural town on the Minnesota-Iowa border, and then suddenly you see this vehicle that everybody's been looking for. And it's not like a specific car that would stand out. I mean, it's a white Dodge Ram, and how many of those are in rural Minnesota where people do work with a lot of trucks? I mean, what can be said about whoever that officer was to kind of have the frame of mind to say, like, wait a second, that is what everybody in the state of Minnesota is looking for right now?
This is exactly how it's supposed to work. When you're doing things like that with Amber Alerts, you get as much information as you possibly can out there to all surrounding agencies. And, you get these briefings and roll call, it's part of as a watch commander, you're going to talk about this. You're going to say, hey, listen, probably moving south, could be coming this way. But it's so critical, like you said, white Ram pickup truck. In itself, there's a lot of white Ram pickup trucks, but a white Ram pickup truck with Tennessee plates is different. So that little bit of information that was added to that alert, that's a big bit of information. So details count, and this is how it's supposed to work.
And I think too, I mean, just assuming this police officer, maybe he's going to grab a cup of coffee, on his shift, and then he's not flipping his mind off, as he's like maybe going to grab something, and he says, "Hey, wait a second, that's," and then he acts on it too, and it's something where he goes and I know what's been alleged is just horrific with what he allegedly did to this young girl, but the fact that they were able to stop them before getting even further away is so critical. The location data seems like a big deal, just in terms of tracking where specifically he was. But what are some of the big pieces when you look at now prosecuting this case that as law enforcement you need to gather? Because on the surface, it seems like a very strong case just based off the location data itself. And then sadly, what the girl has told the people who are doing the forensic interviews. But how do you at this point then build the case to make sure this guy is held to the furthest extent of the law?
You make sure all your documents are correct. You make sure that your warrant that you got to track the vehicle is correct, because, and this is how it used to be when we did it, is if we had an exigent circumstance, we'd call a cell phone company and say, "Hey, listen, this is what we have going on. We need to know where this is." What usually happened was they said, "Okay, here's your exigent circumstances, but you have to back this up with a warrant within 48 hours. And you better do it, because then you start getting into the fruits of the poisonous tree thing. If you can't legally justify why you track this person, you're going to lose it." So, and I'm sure they did. I'm sure they wrote their warrants immediately, because we're much better at that than we used to be. We're more in depth with the technology and how everything works. So you have to get all your documentation. Now you have to show, the prosecutor has to spell out the events. And it starts with what? It starts with the interview with the mom, or with the mom getting the social media contact. You have to lay it out chronologically, how it went. Everything has to be perfect.
Well, and the part two, just going back to what ended up breaking the case, which was this very random and just bizarre social media interaction that sounded very brief that she had in December. I mean, in those types of cases, though, I mean, how many different anecdotes are you going through with this mom and then whoever else was around this child? Because that's the needle in the haystack, and it's very glaring in hindsight. But I just think of the detectives and the work that needs to be done, chasing down how many leads to get to the one that actually leads you to where this little girl is.
It's all in the interview process. Like you said, I mean, when I used to do interviews, I would talk to people and I'd say, "Listen, whatever you think isn't important, tell me about it. Whatever you think is out of the ordinary, but you think it might not be anything, tell me about it. Let me figure it out. Let us run out those leads and the information that you may not think that would be pertinent." So you put your investigators on it, detectives do a good job, and good things happen from a bad situation.
Yeah, and there's a lot of bad in this story, but I mean, you look at the community response, the amount of people that came out middle of the night in Minnesota, cold temperatures and did searching on their own, and then being able to get this girl safely back to her family. There is, he is facing a sex crime in this case, which is just horrific to think about. I mean, how likely is it that this girl, I mean, if he was to take this to trial, that she would actually have to testify? And like, how is that handled by the system? Because it's just, I mean, it makes your skin crawl, just with rage thinking about this guy. And if that ever was a possibility.
You really hope it doesn't come to that. You really hope that you don't have to put a 7-year-old on a stand. And again, it's not like the prosecutor could ask her direct questions about these things. It's got to be done forensically. It's got to be a forensic interview. Now, a lot of times they'll let that interview, the recorded forensic interview, play as evidence. I don't see the little girl testifying. She's safe, physically safe right now, but we're talking about years of therapy or whatever you have to do to make this girl somewhat whole again. I'd sure 2 years down the road, I wouldn't want to put her on a stand as a 9-year-old trying to relive this when it goes to trial.
And it does seem that, I mean, on the kidnapping charge with that location data, that they have an incredibly strong case, because why is this guy specifically going back to this particular area, not just on the day it happened, the 21st, but then also on the 20th, they say that his location data showed him right by the school bus, which is terrifying. And then you look at the social media posts and these admins on these Facebook groups for babysitters are like, this guy was a member of this group. And then there's others that it's hard to, specifically say they're for real, but people who are posting screen grabs saying like, this guy reached out to me offering babysitting services. And then what work now goes into, yeah, he's behind bars. They may have a strong case here in this particular one out of Zimmerman, Minnesota. But I mean, how likely is it that this was the first time, sadly, that something like this happens? Like, I look at this and you just think to yourself, there's got to be a possibility that there's another victim potentially out there that police have to look and make sure that that's not the case.
I'd really be surprised if this was the first victim. I'd really be surprised. It sounds like this guy was planning stuff out. He had a pretty good plan, he thought, but this is not the first run. And that's a terrifying thing to think about. Somebody like this who's going to take the time to do all this research and disguise himself as something else, and this is his first run, I don't think so. I think there's going to be more victims, unfortunately, in this case with this guy.
Yeah, it's just, how often have you seen one as brazen as this too? I mean, I think he's someone who's clearly, if all that is being alleged and he's guilty of it, I mean, to have someone who is so brazen and trying to get in with kids and, going through parents on babysitting sites. I mean, I don't know if I've seen something like this before.
Well, I haven't, but you got to remember, I'm old school. The social media stuff was just coming in, when I was getting towards the end of my career. We had plenty of kids grabbed off the corner just by, pedophiles who grab kids. Horrible. But now with the social media things, with all of these different platforms, it's so much easier for them and more difficult for us to find them. So in my day, you didn't have a lot of this. This is all new to me.
Yeah. And you wonder too, for people, everybody's on social media for the most part. And there's kind of that old PSA part of it of like, remember your social media interactions. But this one just feels like, I mean, if you were to ask someone, who did you talk to on, early December? I mean, that's a really hard anecdote to remember. I mean, clearly it was just a bizarre interaction, but it just seems like this was someone where it's just a blip on the radar and then he's tracking the family, which it's like, how do you even, as a parent, defend yourself from something like this when you have someone who's apparently following you, watching you, if this is all true, and you didn't even realize he was there?
It's very difficult. I mean, it raised enough concern for her to block this guy. So she knew something might have been off. But how do we know that this is a person who not only is trying to friend us and ask us crazy questions, but is sitting outside my door watching my girl go to school and come home from school? I mean, and then situational awareness. I mean, again, it's so difficult to try to protect yourself against this.
Oh, and then when it comes to an Amber Alert, because I know initially law enforcement said when she was just missing, that's not an Amber Alert. But then once they realized that there was a very credible lead that she was going to be with this guy, then the Amber Alert goes out. What is typically the bar for law enforcement where it's not just a missing persons case, this is an Amber Alert?
You have to have some information when you put your Amber Alert in. You have to have some information that these kid is being kidnapped or is traveling, and some information on how they're traveling, a vehicle or whatever, or with the person they're traveling with. So it's not extremely difficult to get an Amber Alert, but you have to have certain other information other than beside the fact that the kid's missing.
Yeah, and they certainly did in this case. And there's the good news of it, which is that this girl is safe and law enforcement was able to find this guy. He's behind bars. He's facing up to 70 years in prison if he's found guilty on these 2 counts. And we'll see if there's more counts that are coming as the investigation continues on. Retired detective commander with the Chicago Police Department, Will Spilar. What a disturbing case. Thank you for talking about it with us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law&Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. And now you can watch episodes of On the Case on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.